Welcome to our video on how the brain processes information. The human brain is an incredibly complex organ, responsible for everything from our basic survival instincts to our ability to think, reason, and create. In this video, we will take a deep dive into the inner workings of the brain and explore the various processes that allow us to perceive, understand, and react to the world around us. Section 1. The anatomy of the brain. Before we can understand how the brain processes information, it's important to have a basic understanding of its structure. The human brain is made up of three main parts: the cerebrum, the cerebellum, and the brainstem. The cerebrum is the largest and most complex part of the brain. It is divided into two hemispheres, the left and the right, which are connected by a bundle of fibers called the corpus callosum. The cerebrum is responsible for our ability to think, reason, and make decisions. It also controls our movement, sensation, and perception. The cerebellum, located beneath the cerebrum, is responsible for coordinating movement and balance. It receives information from the sensory systems and sends signals to the muscles to coordinate movement. The brainstem, located between the cerebrum and the spinal cord, connects the brain to the rest of the body. It controls important functions such as breathing, heart rate, and blood pressure. Section 2. The neural pathways. So how does information travel through the brain? The brain is made up of billions of nerve cells, or neurons, which communicate with each other through electrical and chemical signals. These signals travel along neural pathways, which are made up of groups of neurons that work together to carry out specific functions. One of the most important neural pathways in the brain is the pathway that carries sensory information from the periphery of the body to the brain. When we see, hear, touch, taste, or smell something, specialized receptors in our eyes, ears, skin, tongue, and nose send signals to the brain through this pathway. Once the information reaches the brain, it is processed and interpreted by different regions of the cerebrum. For example, visual information is processed in the occipital lobe, while auditory information is processed in the temporal lobe. Section 3. The chemical messengers. So far we've talked about electrical signals, but it's important to note that neurons also communicate through chemical signals. These chemical signals are called neurotransmitters, and they are released by neurons to communicate with other neurons. There are many different types of neurotransmitters, each with their own unique function. For example, dopamine is involved in the reward system, while serotonin is involved in regulating mood. When a neurotransmitter is released, it binds to receptors on the receiving neuron, which triggers an electrical signal. This process is called synaptic transmission, and it is the basis for all neural communication in the brain. Section 4. Learning and memory. Now that we understand the basics of how information travels through the brain, let's talk about two important processes, learning and memory. When we learn something new, we are essentially creating new neural connections in the brain. This process is called synaptic plasticity, and it is the basis for all forms of learning. For example, if you're learning to play a new song on the piano, your brain is forming new connections between the neurons that control your fingers and the neurons that process the sound of the piano. Once we learn something, it's important that we are able to remember it. Memory is the process of storing and retrieving information, and it is closely linked to synaptic plasticity. When we form new neural connections, we are also strengthening existing ones. This is known as synaptic strengthening, and it is the basis for long-term memory. There are different types of memory, including short-term memory and long-term memory. Short-term memory, also known as working memory, is the ability to hold onto information for a short period of time. For example, when you are trying to remember a phone number before you dial it, you are using your short-term memory. Long-term memory, on the other hand, is the ability to store information for extended periods of time. This type of memory is stored in various regions of the brain, such as the hippocampus, and can last for days, months, or even a lifetime. Section 5. The impact of trauma and injury. While the brain is an incredibly powerful and adaptable organ, it is also vulnerable to injury and disease. Trauma and injury to the brain can have a significant impact on its ability to process information. Traumatic brain injury, or TBI, can occur as a result of a blow to the head, such as in a car accident or sports injury. TBI can cause a wide range of symptoms, including headaches, memory loss, and difficulty with coordination and balance. Stroke is another condition that can impact the brain's ability to process information.